Bizarre Reality Media. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries for Reality with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep conversational exploration into the fringes of social norms. I'm the one they call Shane, aka the original ShaynOsquatch, and today for you guys, I have JJ Vance from the Operation GCD podcast for a thought-provoking conversation into the world of parapolitics, conspiracy theories, and the intriguing intersections of history and modern society. JJ shares his unique insights on his time as a military police officer and his experiences with the strange and unusual, including tales of vampires, secret societies, and the elusive Society of Cincinnati. But before we get into this fascinating conversation, just a couple of quick news and updates. First and foremost, the Patreon is going to be back under a little bit of construction. I'm going to be trying to work on some new perks for some of the tiers over there. I mentioned it on the last couple of episodes, but I'm going to bring it up on this one again. I'm going to be doing something called the monthly Bizarre Town Hall meetings, which are going to be live meetup group discussions. Either I can bring stuff that we can all discuss together, or if you guys have any stories or anything that you guys might want to discuss, or some experiences you might want to discuss, we can all kind of bring that together. As far as this one goes, it's going to be something that's going to be available for anybody that's paying for the Patreon, so you'll be able to even access it with the ad-free / early access tier, but it'd be something I'd really like to put together with you guys, so if anybody might be interested in that, just let me know through a message, something like that. Pop onto the Patreon, check it out for a free trial, let me know through a message. But before that starts rolling, I want to make sure we at least have a little group of people to make it fun for everybody, and it's not just one-on-one with me and somebody else, for example. But moving on past that, the t-shirt giveaway is still going on, so if anybody is still interested in winning a free t-shirt of their choice off of the Bizarre Reality Media merch store, all you guys have to do is fill out a quick 8-question survey, all your guys' thoughts and opinions pertaining to the show, all things that'll hopefully help the show grow and improve as we're going throughout the year. So if you guys don't mind taking a few extra minutes to do that, I would greatly appreciate it. And at the end of the day, you might end up winning a free t-shirt of your choice. So that sounds like it might be something you're interested in. That link is available down in the show description. And if anybody is interested in catching the next live episode of Bizarre Inquiries, that'll be happening on December 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the usual time, on the Bizarre Reality Media, YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble channels. And if anybody has any questions, clips, or articles that they would like to submit for that, make sure you guys get it to us before that date. And if not, we'll just pass them on to the next episode. And if anyone is interested in possibly being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, having a thought-provoking conversation with me, or contacting me for any other reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofrealitypodcast@outlook.com. Or you guys could always call or text the Bizarre Reality Media hotline, and you guys could call or text that 24/7, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you happen to miss that, it is available down in the show description. And if you guys are so cool as to be interested in supporting the show and showing some love for the show and all the hard work behind it, one of the ways you guys can do that is by going and checking out the Patreon, which I would definitely appreciate. 2 tiers available over there, as I mentioned previously, ad-free / early access and full access, and there are 7-day free trials available for both if you're interested in seeing what they're all about. And if you guys might be interested in wearing your love for the show, you guys could always go and check out the Bizarre Reality Media merch store with t-shirts just $15.68 plus shipping, which equals out to about $20, so not too bad. And with the holidays coming up, you could always pick up a t-shirt for any fans of the show or any friends that might like any of the conspiracy type or cryptid-like designs that I got over there. And if you guys might be interested in helping me out this holiday season with being able to make up for some expenses, with the kids and everything, and possibly even get me an energy drink encouraging to keep me up through the night, you guys could always donate to the show directly, which I always appreciate and will give you guys a big shout out in the show for. And you guys could always do that through Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. And last but not least, you guys could always go and check out the affiliate links with some additional discounts and credits available for you guys. We got Dimension devices for some paranormal investigating equipment if you might be interested in that. And we also have Sticker Mule with a $10 free credit if you might need to get some t-shirts, stickers, or anything like that for your company or podcast or anything else like that. And I know times are tough out there, and as we're getting a bit closer to the holidays and money is getting a little bit tighter, if you might still be interested in supporting the show in some other ways, one of the best ways that you guys can do that is by leaving some love over on whatever podcatcher you happen to use. Leave a review, 5-star review preferably, and of course I will read it on the show and give you guys a big shout out. You guys could always go and follow the show on Instagram, TikTok, and or Facebook. And you guys could also share the show through word of mouth with any friends, enemies, anyone around you that you think might possibly enjoy the show. And you guys could also go and catch live shows and video content on the Bizarre Reality Media, YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble channels. And last but not least, you guys could always go and show some love for my other show that I do with my co-host over there, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin, diving into a lot of the same stuff that we talk about over here, but it's all research, a little bit different of a format. It's both of us going back and forth with our own research. So if you guys might be looking for another podcast to get you guys through the work week, might be something you guys might enjoy if you guys enjoy this show. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. I have JJ Vance from Operation GCD Podcast. How's it going today, man?
IKNOWSQUATCH, greetings, sir. I appreciate the invite. Looking forward to the conversation. Enjoyed your podcast today with Heidi Love. It's always great research that she's doing. And I also caught your show recently on vampires. And so I was explaining to you before the show here, I've encountered an inordinate amount of vampires in my life here. But JJ Vance, not the vice president and host of Operation GCD.
Well, perfect, man. Actually, weirdly enough, you brought up Heidi. She was the one that actually recommended you for the show. And after listening to the vampire episode, you happened to have dropped a bomb on me before we started recording that I was not expecting, which we will definitely get into in the show. But first and foremost, man, for anybody that may not be familiar with who you are, what your podcast is exactly, and what you talk about, man, why don't you let them know a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do over there, man?
JJ Vance, first time guest, not the first time listener though. I caught a couple of your shows. Again, enjoyed them, sir.
Well, I appreciate it.
Operation GCD. I'm a garbage can dude, just doing garbage can dude stuff. I've been hosting my podcast there about a little over 9 years now. It's gone through a couple different iterations. Its current iteration, I do Operation GCD Sundays, my tales of high weirdness and parapolitics I've encountered in my life, and do a Patreon preview, and then I do a longer show there on full show on Patreons, and do a Thursdays. I've been unpacking the Satanic Panic, the anatomy of the Satanic Panic is what I call it. Do a Patreon show there as well, and then every Wednesdays I do a film review, an occult and or esoteric film review, where I unpack film reviews with various guests and parapolitics out of these films. We see a lot of I like to do a lot of comedies there, but as it was Halloween time in October, we did all Halloween movies, or horror films. November's National Security November, doing all national security films, and then got a lot of Christmas lineups for next month. And then Fridays I do a roundtable discussion, sir. Certainly enjoy you having you join me there. Roundtable discussion on conspiracy cultures and high weirdness, and all of these are at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Times.
Sounds like you got a lot of really fun stuff going on over there, man. And I'm sure that the listeners probably caught up on the specific word, which I definitely think will be a fun means of conversation to get into today. But parapolitics, man, I like that word, because I'm assuming this is kind of the terminology that you'd use for like combining the weird aspect of politics, such as like the reptilians, the elites, all these concepts, correct?
Sure. They could fall within that category. Yes, sir. It's a broad-ranging tale, just like these tales of national security. It's a very ambiguous and abstract, very nebulous term that can mean anything to anyone. So, but I would say parapolitics falls into a lot of these matters where you're describing. Really, by its base definition, you mean para, running alongside, and then politics. So, these are the parapolitical matters we're often unpacking in conspiracy culture, at least on Operation GCD specifically here, sir. I do a lot of these things. Call myself not a true crime podcast, but I do a lot of true crime stuff because spent 20 years as a military police sergeant, in the U.S. Air Force. And I was started my career as the poster child, and into my career, not so much. So, I don't play politics, is what I was getting at there. So, but I'm happy to unpack the parapolitic natures of American society and focus on from the inception to our modern era. And one of the things I point out, as far as all the pattern of behavior goes, is all roads lead back to the secret society that started America, the Society of the Cincinnati. All parapolitics and conspiracies.
Well, man, I always find it fascinating that everybody that ends up in the military always ends up being anti-politics, starts getting into all this conspiracy stuff. Because, of course, I'm assuming that just like most people, you've had these different events that probably happened to you while you're in the military that started kind of making you attuned to some of this stuff. Or, you know, maybe you were kind of into some of this stuff before you got into the military. And once you actually got in, you started seeing this stuff from the inside perspective. But what kind of happened as far as getting you going from, you know, being that military poster boy to getting to where you are now, kind of exposing some of these secrets and letting everybody know about what's really going on in the world?
I think you're spot on, sir. It's a great question. I think you're spot on. It was, I like to say it's like a dimmer switch. So, you know, slightly more getting turned on over time there. But as the poster child of the U.S. Air Force, I was a SWAT team leader as a teenager. So that was weird. I did personal security details for the Secretary of the Air Force. That was kind of strange at the age of 20. Anyhow, I'd find myself managing the military police budget at headquarters by the age of 29. That was an odd environment. So I got deeply ingrained into politics, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I've never voted, sir. Take that back. I voted once under duress. That's a different story altogether. But I don't do politics, and I found myself embedded in politics working at headquarters in D.C., eventually managing the budget, manpower, and equipment, and finances, all that stuff for all the military units, military police units, the Air Force bases. So. You're kind of forced to be in politics at that rate because a lot of politics are soliciting your time to sign off, and you know, like, oh, we want to get this in a bill. We need you to say yes to it. I'm like, I don't have time for your Muppet business. They're all Muppets, if you ask me.
Which I'm assuming probably kind of led into kind of your motif that you got going for your podcast, where you got, you know, Oscar the Grouch, and you got all the different puppets and everything across all of your album covers, trying to make light of the stage that is politics, you know?
Yeah, because I was in D.C. sir for 6.5 years, and before that, again, I saw a lot of stuff doing security, Secret Service details, etc. You know, I can't take these folks seriously. They're not serious people. They're Muppets, and they should be looked at as such. You know, they're all the folks in D.C. are there because they're dumb and depraved. I'm not trying to besmirch my kinfolk, but my cousin included. So I'm not the vice president. I oftentimes get conflated with that individual, but not me. No, I think over time. So by the time I left DC working in the headquarters, they were doing stuff. It was not a favorable position to have a water cooler talk about how Islamic terror was created by our government and that 9/11 was an inside job. That's not well taken at the Pentagon water cooler talk.
I would assume not.
So, but it was matters such as, you know, again, stuff I'd seen a lot of years in combat. Et cetera, you know, and then I started getting into more of this conspiracy culture stuff. I first discovered Behold a Pale Horse. I was raised Mormon, so that helped me out a lot. Mormons look at everything as a conspiracy, so. But I discovered Behold a Pale Horse, and then, you know, Dave McGowan's work this is all around the 2010, 2011 timeframes. By the time I discovered the work of Dave McGowan, I often argue he radicalized me. I joke about that, but I mean, it is, you know, his work. Are you familiar with his work?
Yeah, of course.
Dave McGowan?
Yeah.
Program to Kill, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyons, Wagging the Moondoggy, you know, so the Boston bombing, you know.
Well, I got to double back for a second here because you brought up the fact that you were raised Mormon. And of course, I have to dive into that a little bit because everybody kind of has different experiences as far as Mormonism go. And, you know, of course, we kind of have the mutual friend Heidi who went through all of that type of stuff. Did you have some of the similar experiences as her, or was yours a little bit more vanilla than some other people have kind of described the Mormonism belief system?
Oh, I was starkly different. Heidi and I have unpacked a lot of these things in various podcasts we've done together. In fact, Heidi's, I think we're sixth cousins. We've even compared our genealogy. So, you know, a lot of Mormons are related. Nonetheless, yeah. So we, you know, she was from a deep deep rooted Mormon family out west in the nation of Deseret, now known as Utah, the Mormon nation. My mother was a convert, so she converted in Washington D.C. and I was raised Mormon as a result of that.
Did you end up sticking with it, or are you one of the people that kind of pushed away from it and either one fell off of religion altogether, or did you kind of push into something else?
I'd say I stuck with it about age 22. So I joined the Air Force at 17. I was a child. I'm not sure I don't really condone these activities. Anyhow, so I stuck around for about 5 years to about 22. And, largely because I was in combat a lot during that time. I was like, I got to go do church Jesus stuff. Nothing against folks who do that. I'm just saying Jesus is not like a primary character in the Mormons, just saying. They do their ancient alien cargo cults is what I call them. They have a worship of an ancient alien god that somehow you'll be a god on your own planet someday. That's weird. But, we've compared a lot. I have a very unique, I would argue I have a very unique, despite being an East Coast Mormon of a convert nature, I have a very unique Mormon upbringing. The ward I grew up in Cincinnati, it was my teenage years there, and with my formative years as far as holding the Mormon priesthoods go. They give you various priesthoods throughout your teenage years. Ceremonial magical priesthoods. They don't like you to talk magic and aliens, but they'll give you the magical priesthoods. They'll talk about magical priesthoods while giving you the priesthood, but no questions. So there is that kind of secret society aspect to it. As you go up in the ranks, they give you more information. So, it's weird the one I had though, because it's different, but it was unique.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
Say, considering that you kind of are somewhat familiar with Heidi's story, and I'm assuming that my listeners are somewhat familiar with Heidi's story too, since she's been on the show talking about it before. What are some of the main differences that you guys have kind of noticed as far as your upbringing with West Coast versus East Coast when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, they're way more serious about it. I mean, you're looked down upon if you're not there 4 or 5 nights a week doing stuff. Various extracurricular activities. I'd have youth group. I'd have the joint co-youth group with the girls my age as well there with the men's priesthood group. So I have the priesthood group one night, the co-ed group another night. I'd have Boy Scouts another night. You know what I mean? Then I'd probably have a volunteer of some regard there at the church. And then I'd have church on Sunday. So I'm there 5 nights a week as a teenager. So they're more serious about it out there than they were out in Cincinnati. I mean, you're frowned upon, but you're ostracized in Utah if you don't participate.
So did you end up, just out of curiosity, some of these stranger rites and rituals that Heidi kind of described, did you end up going through any of these? And also, if you have, of course, she went through the female perspective on this stuff. So what was kind of the male perspective going through some of this stuff?
I've done some necromancy, sir. That's what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. Some of the weird stuff, when they get everybody in the gowns and everything, and they push them through the room, and they tell them all these different stories about, Lucifer and Jesus being brothers, and all that weird stuff, man.
Well, I've done some baptisms for the dead. That's when you go get baptized in proxy of somebody, right? You get on your magical underwears that protects you from knife strikes, some bullet attacks, and most nuclear weapons. And then they dunk you in the water a bunch of times in this weird ritual, very Masonic style rituals, in fact. But a lot to be said about that. But yeah, I've done some of that weird stuff.
I was going to say, because it seems there has to be a reason why, as far as the parapolitics, because, a lot of people, it's kind of you just get into the politics specifically, but I'm assuming that you definitely have gone through some weird stuff to get into the more parapolitical side of things.
Again, you see a lot of things growing up, sir. I took a lot of notes, did a lot of audits of my childhood, contemporarily speaking, and I'm like, what's going on around here, folks? You know what I mean? So, you may not know what I mean, but for example, over the years, just relative to the Mormons, so infamous parapolitical situation with the Mormons that Heidi's covered a lot, Watergate. Bob Bennett, he would be the future U.S. Senator from Utah. At the time, he ran and owned and operated, at least on paper, a PR company, the Mullen Public Relations Firm, which employed E. Howard Hunt, the famous Watergate burglar. He was a contract employee at the White House in that whole Watergate situation, employed by the Mullen Corporation. And it turns out in those church committee hearings in Congress in the 70s, they determined that, I believe it was the Rockefeller Commission, apologies, the one subsequent to the church committee hearings, they determined that the Mullen Corporation was indeed a CIA Mormon front company. So, and they told Bob Bennett in those hearings, you better shut it the fuck down. And there was no accountability, but they shut the corporation down. So Bob Bennett would then, a couple years later, replace his father as the U.S. Senator for Utah. as Heidi's pointed out as well, he's a Skull and Bonesman of the Utah variety, at the University of Utah chapter of Skull and Bones.
I didn't even know that Skull and Bones extended into other factions. I thought it was just one place specific at one specific school.
I did too, until Heidi brought it to my brain hole that they have one other chapter. It's at the University of Utah. They opened it, I believe, in 1932.
Well, that would make sense with the Mormons.
Well, and I'll bring this all back to the Society of Cincinnati here for you in a second, so I'll bring it full circle. Again, the secret society that started America, that brought us the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, so on and so forth. This whole situation there with the Mormons and Bob Bennett there, my mother, she was a convert in Washington, D.C., and she dated Bob Bennett when she converted to the Mormons. That was her conversion. She was dating Bob Bennett. This would have been about 2 years prior to those Watergate hearings I was just describing. This would have been like circa 1973. So when I hear stories like that over the years, you're asking me why I've gone to parapolitical matters. I'm like, well, I hear tales like that. And I'm like, and red flag pops off in my brain hole, and I just flag it for later. I'm like, well, that's weird.
I mean, that's honestly the best way to go about this stuff, because you never really realize when stuff's going to connect until you actually start putting it in the back of your mind. And especially when it starts getting into this Mormon stuff, man, they're really like rooted and connected into almost everywhere and everything in some way, shape, or form. So especially when you're diving into this one, man, it's so big that you kind of have to put everything slightly on retainer, because as you start digging up more stuff, you start realizing like, all right, this makes sense why they have ties over here, because it connects with this, because it connects with this, because it connects with this. And the even weirder part is, like, Mormonism isn't even that big of a faction in the United States, but yet, I mean, other than, of course, like Utah, for example, but yet they have their hands in everything. Like, that just shows that it has some type of elitist mentality to this group. Otherwise, that wouldn't be possible.
You are spot on target, sir, including Elon Musk. He's got his Mormon handler. And our FBI director, Cash App PayPal, he actually seems to be living with his Mormon boyfriend in Las Vegas. That's a bit of a horse of a different color. Those are true stories. Anyhow, Mormons. So they're an offshoot of the Society of Cincinnati. The Society of Cincinnati is the modern day Knights Templar. They are literally the bloodline descendants of the Templar. For example, George Washington brought us the U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence. Generally speaking, he's the forefather, right? That's described as such. His forefathers, 10 of his forefathers, in fact, were 10 of the 25 Knights Templar that brought us basically the U.S. Constitution 1.0. The Magna Carta in 1215. Modern day historians describe the U.S. Constitution as the Magna Carta 2.0, the first Bill of Rights, essentially, right? Property ownership, liberty, rights, etc., were established in this contract because it had been stolen from the Templars in 1213 by the Pope and King John. That story is seen in the film Robin Hood. But George Washington is descended from 10 of those 25 knights that brought us the Bill of Rights 1.0. So isn't it weird that 566 years later or so, right? I can't do math, sir. 560 plus years later, approximately, we get their descendant, George Washington. So those men were his 14th through 17th great-grandfather, 10 of them. And then their descendant brings us the Bill of Rights 2.0, because this is a Templar nation. We've been sold a Vatican lies of the crown history of this nation. The Templars were here long before 1492. We see the evidence of that in the Kensington Runestone in 1362. But in regards to the Mormons, the Society of Cincinnati is a modern-day knighthood. They passed down the original membership from the officers that started this nation and that fought for it, Washington's army. And they pass it down through their paternal bloodline to one member. So, for example, Joseph Smith's paternal grandfather, Captain Smith, Massachusetts chapter, Society of the Cincinnati. This goes across the board for the early onset of all the Mormon leadership. And Joseph founds the Mormon Church in April 4th, circa April 4th, 1830, on a mound in Fayette, New York, named after General Lafayette, the leader of the French chapter of the society. So there's 13 colonies, 13 chapters, and a French chapter, because the French and American revolutions were the same. But we see that Society of Cincinnati also adopts the philosophies of the Mormons adopt the philosophies. All of these lost tribes and the mound stuff of the Mormons, that all comes from the society. In fact, one specific founding father, specifically Elias Boudinot, He wrote about all those things years before Joseph Smith published them.
This is going to sound like a total like side venture, but have you ever heard of the book Edidorpa that came out in 1895?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're somewhat familiar with that whole story
the
about
inner earth.
Yes, exactly. So the thing that I was going to bring up is obviously there's a lot of like Freemason type ties, like Masonic type ties to that book, and there's a lot of people that kind of have this belief that it may not be as fictional as it's led off to be, like a lot of these books that seem to have come out around that era. But one of the things that popped up in my mind was the fact that the main character or the guy that wrote the book, whoever it was, is a Cincinnati pharmacologist. So there's already references to Cincinnati, and if I'm not mistaken, they end up going into the underground area off of something that's off of the Ohio River, and I think they start the adventure partially in Cincinnati. So I'm always connecting stuff with this weird book with Edidorpa every single time I dive into anything that's Freemasonry or anything that's kind of in this field. But here's another possible connection with Cincinnati.
I like where your brain was at, sir. Cincinnati is the operational center in the creation of the Society of the Cincinnati, the first mayor of which was a member, so on and so forth. Their descendants that still run the place today. So we see a lot of occultism there. It's also the New Rome, not the Vatican Rome, the Roman Republic. That's who they venerated. Cincinnatus was a man who brought power back to the people twice in the Roman Republic. George Washington thought himself to be the reincarnation of it.
Saying he's got some real weird ties that are like almost everywhere in the U.S. Like one thing that I ended up doing recently was I ended up doing this Stargate, I guess you could say tour, but I ended up going with a friend who's going to be popping on the show here soon, Chad Strumke. But anyways, we were going down to Detroit, and we're kind of doing this this walkway where you kind of can find all these like different like portal architectures and all this like ancient occult stuff that's kind of like hidden within the city. And there's a statue of George Washington that's right in front of this church that has like the Freemason symbol on the side of it. And if you go back a little bit farther, there's a monument that everybody's somewhat familiar with in Detroit, the Joe Louis fist. And the fist is held up by this pyramid shape. But if you stand on the other side of it, then George Washington is inside that pyramid shape, and it almost kind of looks like that, that old Freemason picture where it's George Washington and there's like a feast standing around it, and there's like that pyramid that he's standing underneath. Looks just like that when you sit there and you look at it from the right perspective. But just to bring in another weird tie with him with Freemasonry,
I'm familiar with what you're describing, sir. Detroit's a heavy mountain town as well. To be fair, full disclosure, I'm a George Washington super fan. I started tracking the man's life long before I realized I'm likely, in all likely probabilities, his descendant. So he's not known to have any children. I get that, but there was a man known as Abner Vance. That's mine and JD's forefather, shared lineage. He was a spy and a scout for Washington, and his mother was the first cousin of Martha. And his father and George go back to George when George was 17. They were surveyors together. And it's not known in history how George and Martha met. Modern day historians are like, you tell me, buddy. And I'll tell you, they met through Matthew and Ann Vance, Martha's first cousin and George's friend. And that's how they met. And they'd already been married 6 years by the time George met Matthew Vance. And, George got in some heat back there in around 1760 the year after he married Martha and became the largest private landowner in America. I do suspect that when Abner Vance was born in 1760, he was adopted off to the folks that introduced them, Martha's cousin and George's friend, Matthew Vance and Ann Jones Vance. And DNA tests would indicate that. I am not kinfolk with any Vance folk that are not descended from Abner. I do have an indescribable amount of Dandridge and Washington folks that I have no reason for, because while Ann Jones Vance was first cousin of Martha, not Dandridge. It was through Martha's mother. Ann's father, William Lane Jones, was the brother of Martha's mother, Frances Jones, I believe is her name. So no reason to have Dandridge other than that. And on top of that, you may be thinking, well, I shouldn't have much of that anyway if these folks are so far back. I have 4 Abner Vances in me because my Appalachian family tree looks like an Appalachian family pole because it lacks the requisite branches in which to be called a tree, sir. So I'm utterly shocked. I don't have web feet, recessed chin line, and a sub 70 IQ, but it is the nature of the investigations I have been doing in ancient America, the Society of Cincinnati, in my lineage.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. Now back to the show.
Well, I'm glad that you introduced this concept, man, because I've honestly can say that I've never heard of the Society of Cincinnati before. So I'm glad that you're kind of introducing it to my audience for the first time because, like I said, I've never actually heard of this before. I've always assumed that
grandson.
with a lot of these secret societies, man, they go back farther. And as soon as you start actually figuring out what one might potentially be, you realize that there's 10 more sub-factions within that group. So every single time you look at any of these groups, it's almost like a pyramid scheme, where as soon as you feel like you figured something out, you keep chipping away, and then there's 10 other groups going back up. And as soon as you start getting into those groups, you start getting into ones that nobody's ever heard of before. And then all of a sudden the group shifts again, because that's, what they generally do in these situations. You got to have that protective barrier. And as soon as people start breaking it away, you shift and move somewhere else again.
Nah, it's a spot-on analysis, sir. The Society of Cincinnati's bifurcated numerous times into smaller factions and groups over the years. The anti-liberty, there's an overall faction I call the Liberty faction and the anti-liberty faction. Aaron Burr would be representative of the anti-liberty faction when he assassinated the then president general of the society, Alexander Hamilton, in his attempted coup of America. Modern-day historians recognize he attempted to coup America. They say that was a personal beef that happened beforehand. I would argue otherwise. So that was his first step in the coup, was to take out the president general of the society, his fellow member of the New York chapter, Alexander Hamilton. So the anti-liberty faction and liberty factions erupted in numerous capacities like that. The Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. Provable by the slave markets that continued in New York City after the end of the war. April 1864. That's demonstrable. So I'll tell you this, though. The war starts in April of 1861. I said 1864, I meant 1865. The war starts in 1861 out of Charleston, South Carolina. Well, the Society of Cincinnati fractured and broke up in April of 1860 when the South Carolina chapter officially quit. So the Civil War was a fracturing of the Society of Cincinnati. They did not they did not come back together for 22 more years. And when they did, they redeveloped new charters and started letting in some of the descendants of enlisted personnel in, which had not originally been, and in an effort to mend the fences.
I kind of wonder if there's all these different groups, like there has to be either two things happening. There's some form of like incest that's happening amongst these groups, that they're all kind of working for the same message, or on the other side of it, they're all actually competing with each other behind the scenes, trying to push their agendas. But I almost kind of get into the more of the concept that these certain groups are probably more incestuous more than anything, and they're all probably all somewhat pushing for the same thing, and they all have the philosophy of a bigger group. But if you're able to do that, where the bigger group isn't actually distinguished as a bigger group, but rather that it's all this philosophy that hides within these smaller groups, then at that point, it's like the bigger group can never be figured out because there isn't any real organization to the bigger group. It's more so just a philosophy that's spread amongst all these groups, so that if one gets destroyed, there's 10 other ones that have the same philosophy. So potentially, none of the philosophy will never be stopped or be ended. It's just going to be shifted from one place to another continuously because there isn't necessarily a head that you can actually point a finger at.
I think you're spot on, sir, and I can give you a couple examples of that revolving around mounds. The ancient architecture, not only of America, but the world. So if you track the Society of Cincinnati had a deep interest in mounds. They're the ones who mapped them all out for us. They started the Smithsonian to do specifically that in 1848. So And they did some of our earliest documents in the National Archives. There are surveys and maps of these mounds from the Society of Cincinnati officers. So if you go back to their forefathers, the Templars, they were building castles on top of mounds that look specifically similar to these mounds in America. And if you go back to what their forefathers were doing, the Normans and the Vikings, they were building mounds. So we have plenty of mound establishments throughout. One specifically I'm thinking of is in Sweden. And they found a very demonic looking trinket. Looks like Mickey Mouse in there. To me, it looks like it was some sort of weird demonic god they were worshiping back then. But you never know. Could be wrong. Scientists called it a lion, but I call the scientists real questionable.
Well, I don't know if you've kind of stumbled across in any of your research, but like, what is the potential reason why they would want to build on top of mounds? Is it the whole idea that these are like linear areas where things are more prone to happen? Is it a matter of having more power because you're building this structure on top of, generations of the buried dead? Like, do you understand? Do you know what like the occult reasoning behind it is supposed to be?
All of the above, sir. You're on target for sure. So if you look at it like a ley line, you can call them nodes on a ley line. I would call them areas in which the veil of this universe has thinned out. Meaning, I can give you a dozen cryptid sightings on mound sites that I believe you'd probably be interested in, but we can, if that's something you're interested in, sir, we can put a pin in it and we'll bring it home on that for the closing portions, because I would like to point out that if you track these mounds and their activities over time throughout the cultures, it does tell a story throughout history, but it also tells a story of this nation and their activities of building things on mounds. So when the Jesuits took over America, came into America for their takeover in the 1820s, they started building on mounds as well as the Freemasons when they started building across America. And there does seem to be a lot of occult nature to a lot of these things, these mound sites. Very spooky nature, if you will. Modern day occultists do rituals there, the OTO variety, the Crowley variety.
So I'd love to dive into some of these sightings that are seen around these mounds. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Fritz Zimmerman, but I had him on the show a few times, and he's in the process of like researching this essentially. He goes to all these different mound sites and he tries these different things. He tries using like EVP, different things, trying to make like connections with whatever happens to be. But he's also kind of noticed this thing that whatever this weird anomalous thing is, like all these creatures, these things that appear, they stay outside of like some of these structures. They stay outside of like the mounds, but they don't actually come like into the mounds. Like, I'd love to kind of dive into some of your research, kind of diving into this stuff.
I mean, that's a similar assessment of what I've seen. So I'll give you a couple examples. You want to get into some weird cryptid stuff here, sir. But you name it. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in and around. I have a general thesis that weird shit happens in and around mounds today. And it's cryptid varieties. It's Satanist varieties. It's, ritualistic varieties of all kinds. But one common trait that seems to replicate itself is the cryptid sightings in and around mound sites. So the Wisconsin Dogman, for example. You're probably hip to that one, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
The first sighting was around 1938 in St. Coletta's Institution?
Believe so, yes.
Jefferson County, you'll notice that these mound sites are named after the Society of Cincinnati, be it Lafayette, Washington, Jefferson, you name it, right? Hamilton's, Madison, like Madison, Wisconsin. So every state capital from 1803 through 1848 in Colorado was built on a mound site via ritual. That's demonstrable. Why they ended in the Civil War, again, is part of this dispute, I argue.
You're talking about like when they started actually trying to like tear apart these mounds and pretend like they just nothing ever existed with them. Like there was no giant skeletons, nothing to see here, people.
Well, that's part of it. But I think there was a geomancy element to these secret societies, and they were deciding which mounds to build very important buildings on top of. So my distant cousin, allegedly, if I were a Vance, this would have been Abner's first cousin, Joseph Vance Jr., 13th governor of Ohio. He moved the capital from Chillicothe, which is like the epicenter. You're looking at a map of all the Adena mound sites, specifically the Adena mound sites, which comes from the society. That name does, by the way. Comes from Thomas Worthington, George Washington's pal. Contingent of the Ohio Company there with the Washington family. He was the 6th governor of Ohio. His mansion was called the Adena Mansion, where the first Adena mound was located, and that was designed by Benjamin Latrobe in the same ancient Greek revival architecture that the Society of Cincinnati adores so much. But when Joseph Vance Jr. was governor, 13th governor, he moved the capital, he signed into legislation, at least, to move the capital to the modern location in Columbus, where in which they removed constructing of that, the initial building burnt. To my understanding, the cornerstone is the same cornerstone. Not the whole building burnt, but the initial building did burn. Speaking of weird shit on mounds. They built it on a mound, the Capitol building in Columbus today. And they allegedly took in a ritual they wrote about and documented, and they took the contents of that mound and built the cornerstone of the building. So literally portions of that mound sit in the Capitol building today. That goes across all the way to Colorado from the first one in Chillicothe was 1803. That one was 1828, I think, in Columbus, the initial groundbreaking. circa. And then all the way to 1848. So we're talking Indiana, Kentucky. All these different state capitals were done the same way. Kansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas.
I'm sure I could even probably throw Detroit into this one too, because Detroit, of course, had their mound sites to begin with. There's also the other weird connections that Belle Isle, which is the island that's like right next to Detroit, was said to have these like Native American gods that would live on it. And then right as soon as they started building settlements here, you have the Nine Rouge that shows up, and he starts, dancing around, and every time there is any type of blood or destruction or war or anything like that, the Nine Rouge is seen, and he's like this premonition of like evil or like the harbinger of doom, so to speak. But even connecting even further than that, man, like I was kind of mentioning, you already have like the Washington symbology that's like all over Detroit. You also get into the Masonic Temple that's in Detroit, which is supposed to be the biggest Masonic temple in the world. Crowley had the original plans that he was going to, be the guy who was going to run this thing. And basically what happened was it was supposed to be like the headquarters for like all the Freemasons to be able to like meet up at this location. And Crowley wanted to be able to be like the leader of all of it. So he was established in the building of it, but he got kicked out of the idea before they actually finished building the building, so he wasn't actually able to fulfill what he was trying to do there. But like, there's clearly all these deep occult connections in Detroit that I'm assuming also kind of connect with all these different cities, that they all probably share a very common history of mound site built up. Weird events start happening, and then you all of a sudden start having all of this Freemason symbology all over the place, hidden all over the city, because there clearly is still some type of power to these areas.
For sure. I think it's the area where the veils of this universe could be manipulated. They're more so there's a word I'm looking for, sort of my brain hole, but there's too much malted hops and bong res today. I can't quite think of it. They're more malleable. It makes the physical nature of our reality more malleable. And that's why we see all these cryptids there too. But that Detroit Freemasonic Hall, if I'm not mistaken, is a concert hall now.
Yep. It's like literally probably the one of the most popular places for concerts to be in Detroit, which also brings in a whole other weird aspect.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying it brings in a whole other weird aspect of like group rituals, because they're regularly doing concerts at these events, even though they quote don't use it as a Freemason temple anymore, so they say.
Yes, sir. I think you're in my brain hole, sir, because that's exactly what I was going to say. So you're telling me that Aleister Crowley designs this ritual music hall where we now get Aleister Crowley inspired rock and roll played there, huh? That's strange.
Yeah, really weird connection. And I mean, even him getting, quote, kicked out of that temple, I still feel like there was probably some underlying tone to that. Like, maybe he couldn't be part of the temple on paper, but if they were actually trying to conduct these deep rituals, which obviously Crowley was going to be one of the main people that are going to be conducting these things, you kind of have to like step back. So, like I said, on paper, he may not have been involved in that temple, but I feel like behind the scenes, he was probably involved in that temple, because actually Chad, the other person I mentioned a little bit earlier too, he mentioned that he had a party at one point at the Masonic Temple, and they were hanging out in the bathroom. They pushed one of the mirrors and they noticed that there was like a hidden door that went to a different hallway that led out somewhere else. So if you found one, I'm assuming that there's these passages hidden all over this fucking place. So if that's the assumption that they built this place to be like the head where everybody can come and meet up, if you're going to be doing these like giant group rituals where all the heads of the Freemasons are meeting up, you're not going to be doing it like, oh, here's all the signs, we're going to be doing this Freemason ritual tonight. It's going to be one of those things that nobody knows who's actually there. They're going to go through these passages and probably more than likely have some type of hidden area, hidden altar area that potentially could even be happening while the concerts are happening, because the building is already full of all of that energy while it's already going on. Like, I'm kind of curious if people pay attention, if they see, people peeking in and out of doors and shit like that.
What's going on. I think that's exactly what's going on in these places, man. Dude, look at all these, like, I used to be really, I enjoy music, used to be going into concerts and festivals and stuff, but I haven't done that in years, and here's why.
It got weird, man.
It's all a fucking ritual, dude. It's all occult. It's all built on Crowleyisms. This whole era of music that was ushered in the 1960s. Again, Dave McGowan radicalized me, but what I'm saying there is, I don't do these things. Look at Taylor Swift concerts. They have this new syndrome called, everyone's forgetting they're losing their memories at Taylor Swift concerts. Folks go to Taylor Swift concerts, and I'm assuming getting mass scaled MK Ultra because they're leaving there with just blank memory.
After paying $2,000 for a ticket, and I can't even remember the damn show now. Like,
like how was that show? Like, I don't know, man. I don't remember any of it. I'm like, well, that's weird, man.
It was $2,000 though. I got the ticket.
And look at the craze that goes around it. I remember when she came to Cincinnati a couple years ago. Literally, you couldn't get a hotel room for like 60 or 70 miles, and when you could, it was like a budget 8 for $400. You know what I mean? For like an entire week, she did multiple shows. It's crazy.
Yeah, especially considering that it's just like, I don't know. I'm sure that you probably kind of were around for the era where she was kind of like there, but she wasn't. Then all of a sudden she was just like in everybody's faces. Like something like instantly happened overnight. Like I know she was like around, but like she instantly had this flip where like people got obsessed with her, like to the point where like people are willing to pay $2,000 for a ticket. Like the weird aspect of that, man, is when you start actually understanding some of this like ritual magic for some of this stuff and people actually like selling their souls, so to speak, for fame. Like that is a prime example. Like how else would you explain some of these people that are around for 10 years, then all of a sudden they just come to a whole different level of almost like idol worship, like overnight? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, well, for sure. I think you're spot on, sir. She's got that weird banker daddy that financed a lot of the stuff from Wall Street. It gets real shifty. But yeah, so she's obviously been part of a larger propaganda machine, clearly on its face with the whole NFL and Travis Kelce. And, that's pretty apparent at this point in time that's a public relations situation. And being used as such, the numbers it's generated for the NFL is astronomical. They've got a whole new fan base of Swifties. Now, I will tell you, there's one Swiftie that it's been concerning to me. It was one of the top Swifties. She won an award for it. She helped solve a smiley face killer crime, apparently down in Nashville, 2 St. Patrick's days ago. Riley Strain. She's an individual who happened to be down there from Green Bay, Wisconsin, visiting Nashville. Just happened to be walking down the side of the riverbanks, happened to be TikTok, and happened to find missing Riley Strain's credit card after he'd been gone a week. The day before they find his body, just downstream about 7 miles. Don't make any sense. A lot of weird stuff to a lot of these elements within the country music sphere altogether. Riley Strain was last seen technically at Luke Bryan's bar. He got thrown out of, but he didn't make it in but the doorway there before he got thrown out. He had previously had drinks at Garth Brooks' bar just down the way there in Nashville. He was a college student in town with his fraternity brothers for a fraternity conference from the University of Missouri. He was most certainly murdered by the smiley face killer cult. And, I think it is odd that he was at Garth Brooks' bar because there's that whole Garth Brooks is a serial killer thing you look at those details, it kind of makes, there's something going on there.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up, too, because you mentioned Garth Brooks' bar. And for anybody that may not be familiar with that whole conspiracy, I'm sure that I can't fully shed full light on it, but essentially the idea behind it is that almost every single city that he has toured or done a concert in, somebody has gone missing directly after. That's like the precipice of it, if I'm incorrect, right?
Yep, and I like to break things. Garbage can dude, sir, Operation GCD, but it's also what I used to call my detective agency, the way I look at matters in life, especially parapolitics and whatnot. True crime. That is greatest common denominator. So I'll break it down to the greatest common denominator of that theory and the salient characteristic therein, and that is in 1996. Garth Brooks was at a rest area after a show, truck stop, and this girl goes missing from that same truck stop. Her car is later found at that truck stop. Witness reports state she was talking to a man in this caravan of trucks and buses that was there. Oh, shit, that sounds a lot like Garth. 30 years old, 6 foot tall, brown hair. Oh, shit, white dude sounds a lot like Garth. That woman was found 3 states away, I believe it was, or 2 states away, along interstate. Body just dumped along the side of the road about a week later, right? A week later, after Garth had traveled that same route, making 2 different concert stops. After that second concert stop, onto his third concert stop in between is where they found that body. So if that don't have something to do with Garth Brooks' tour, maybe not Garth himself, someone within his apparatus there of his tour company and operations, well, I'm not sure what it does, because I actually think I've noted the smiley face killer cult. It's a very occult, ritualistic modern day human sacrifice on these mound sites, which were the sites of ancient human sacrifice, strangely enough. Those folks have seemed to be operating through music in roadie operations as well. So I'm not saying it's Garth, but there's something going on with that Garth situation for sure.
I mean, I want to talk about some weird stuff, man. Comedians, they seem to be linked in with a lot of this stuff. And they're some of the people that kind of portray a message without being completely direct about it. Everybody knows all the weird stuff that's with Bert Kreischer, with all the weird like minor jokes and everything he makes. They don't really notice till later on. But linking further out.
Let me drop this one on you, sir. If we can ruminate on Bert Kreischer for a second. Did you know his father was L. Ron Hubbard, Scientologist founder's personal attorney?
I did not know that. But this would probably even connect even further with what was trying to get to. Tom Segura. I'm sure you're familiar with him too, buddy of Bert Kreischer. So he recently did this show called Bad Thoughts. And one of the skits on it was basically that he was this country music artist that kidnaps people and tries to scare them into basically giving him ideas for good songs. But tell me, looking at this representation and hearing about the whole thing with Garth Brooks, that doesn't look like he might be trying to possibly portray Garth Brooks.
No, I'm hip, sir. I'm hip. You're spot on. I think we're looking to hear is cult warfare. He's part of a cult. He's part of a cult. Cult warfare. So Tom Segura fits that Dave McGowan weird scenes kind of mold. His father was a Wall Street bank executive, and he was also a U.S. Marine Corps officer, retired. Fits that mold specifically. Tom's mother's Portuguese, I believe, which led to him learning Portuguese, which led to him being the Portuguese translator for America's Most Wanted for a number of years. That's how he got his start in Hollywood.
I did not know that. But, I mean, that would completely make sense why, with a lot of this comedy stuff, man, it almost kind of seems like either one, they're making fun of the conspiracy, or true, they know information about it. But that is almost like the perfect psyop, because then at that point, you can throw out real information, but then at the same time, make it look like a joke, so that most people would be like, oh, conspiracy, haha, it's a joke, blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, and they're taking shots at each other. So look at all the Lady Bird Lake deaths and the smiley face killer phenomenon that struck Austin at the same time. Segura, Rogan, and the rest of the mothership motherfuckers came in there. My apologies for cursing. I don't care much for their ilk. They all seem like some dark bastards to me, not the least of which Rogan. But especially when you hang out with somebody like Damien. Let me qualify that. Folks may not understand. When you hang out with Damien Eccles, convicted child killer, murderer, diddler, West Memphis 3, when they call him a friend, Doug Stanhope's best friend, who shares a tattoo with Marilyn Manson, and their other best friend, Johnny Depp, and they're a little trio right there, Doug Stanhope, and Rogan's kind of right there on the side. You know, to the point where when Anton LaVey's grandson, Xandor LaVey, got married, he hired, for whatever reason, Joe Rogan and his pal Duncan Trussell as the entertainment for the wedding. And Duncan Trussell's the guy who put Damien Eccles, that convicted kid-dealing murder from Memphis 3, on his Netflix show. So these are some dark bunch. They share a different value system, in my assessment.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He's the one that showed up dressed like a wizard on Joe Rogan too, right?
Yeah, Trussell's got some interesting friends. Again, Stanhope does as well. Stanhope's best friends are Johnny Depp and Marilyn Manson. These are the neo-process, major figures in the neo-process movement of Satanism.
Like I said, man,
they got words, sir, not mine. These are their own statements. These are not allegations I'm making towards them.
Hey, they lay the groundwork and it's right in front of people, but that's how they're able to kind of like have plausible deniability, is the fact that if they lay it down and they almost kind of make it seem like it's a joke in the process of doing this stuff, then they can either one, flip it and be like, oh, I was talking about it the whole time. Or on the flip side, you could be like, oh no, I was just joking about it, and you people ended up taking it seriously. But like Bert Kreischer, prime fucking example, his main joke with the whole like I am the machine thing, talk about going to Russia, and he says something about fucking minors, and he's like, oh, it's not the ones that I was hoping it was. And you catch all these like little minor touching jokes. Yep. Like there was even one ongoing joke that he does about watching his daughter stick her finger in her ass so that the dog can smell it, like repeatedly, like watching this for hours. And it's like, once you hear the context of some of this stuff, like everybody's laughing, they think it's hilarious, but if you sit back and actually listen to what these people are saying, it's pretty fucking weird, man. Like it's bizarre, dude. Like what right-minded person would watch their daughter put their finger in their ass for 2 hours to make the dog smell it? Like that is beyond creepy and weird.
I like your brain holes that, sir, and I'll throw another one in there too on that same mix. Their pal Ari Shafir jokes about showing his girlfriend's 7-year-old daughter his dick. So these are people with different value systems. So I would argue Kreischer and his wife are Scientologists. His career is thanks to Scientology, not the least of which his father, not the least of which his sisters were executives in Hollywood as a result of that relationship, I imagine, between old Bert Sr. and L. Ron Hubbard. And Will Smith is who discovered Bert Kreischer back in 1997, and Will Smith was most certainly a Scientologist at that time. Whether or not he is today is a different story, I suppose, but he was at that time. He ran a Delphi school. He had a chartered school from Scientology. That's where them damn Smith kids went to. That's why them messed up kids went to. They got learned by Scientology and Xenu stuff. They don't. So first of all, Scientology does not believe in children. So you want to understand, not only does the Crowley Satanism that they came from, like, advocate literally advocate diddling of kids and murdering kids as well. Look at what Damien Eccles is. That was a Crowley ritual. We also see them advocate, or the fact that Scientology took it a step further in corporate Satanism, as I call it, the offshoot of the OTO there, with L. Ron Hubbard out of the Agape Lodge of Crowley, OTO. They declared all children are just old aliens in a young body. So they fixed that problem altogether. So that way they can sex traffic, and they can do whatever they want to the child at that point. They can put them to 40 hours of labor a week at the age of 7. They're an old alien. They can do that. It's just a young body. So that's the way they advocate these things within their systems, I think. But there's a lot of dark stuff that goes on around all of these characters, in my opinion, Secure included.
Say it's just a matter of actually paying attention to what they're saying and not just like laughing at the joke because everybody else is laughing with it. Because that's almost part of the group ritual, man, is if you normalize these jokes and make it so that you can say them to the point where people aren't even paying attention to the context of what you're saying, then that's that perfect subconscious placing your ideas in somebody's head without actually being direct about it. Like that's ideally the occult concept, but in a more direct way. It's almost like revamping the way that they're doing things.
You're spot on, sir. I unpacked this in my Thursday show, The Anatomy of the Satanic Panic series, because this, what you're describing, is the intent of the PSYOPs to mind war. The Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army, allegedly Special Forces, Michael Aquino, wrote down and got released in the 80s, published by Bill Cooper. It was written in the 80s, released by Bill Cooper in his Behold a Pale Horse. And it describes specifically what you're talking about, how they're going to convince folks of the PSYOPs to mind war and the psychological warfare of this Satanism. And again, you might be thinking, it is what the Phoenix program came home. It's what Dave McGowan said in his program to kill. And this was what Aquino did for CIA Director Bill Colby in Vietnam, Viet fucking Nam. He ran the Phoenix program, and he made his bones weaponizing religion in Southeast Asia against the populace. So you can weaponize Buddhism and in other religions, Taoism, et cetera, there in certain capacities. They aren't going to the same tactics are not going to work for Christianity. So, for example, they had one belief system over there of a vampire living. Speaking of vampires, man, I've met a lot of vampires, man. Vampires living in the jungles, and they would murk the Phoenix program. Assassins and psychological operations would convince folks vampires from the jungle. That'd be Aquino's task. And then the assassins would come in and murk a village person that was part of the problem for them, right? For the CIA and whatnot over there. And then they would drain that individual their blood and make it look like a vampire did, and then hang them from the middle of the village. This is what Dave McGowan says serial killers are. They're being on display for terror and torment of our society, psychological warfare, and that is correct. And it's done under the guise of Satanism, because how do you weaponize Christianity? Through Satanism.
I mean, that is definitely true, that it's a matter of inversion and flipping, because this is something I've been talking about for a while that you see specifically in kid shows. But first, let me kind of step back the philosophy a little bit. When you get into the whole Luciferian Satanism aspect of things, the inversion is basically that Satan/Lucifer was the person that gave knowledge. So he was never really the bad guy. He was a person that was kind of pushed to be the bad guy, but he was actually trying to help humanity by bringing knowledge, as they say, so to speak. So with a lot of these kid shows, one thing that I've noticed is that they try to...
If I may interject real quick, sir, to give a delineation from my understanding between these two topics of Satanism and Luciferianism amongst the modern day occultists, at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Take for example, the Process Church. They have 4 gods: Jesus, Lucifer, Jehovah, and Satan. So within the Lucifer element of that, they're trying to seek that balance. They'll do a bunch of negative, bad shit. They'll be happy to do that. But then they seek for that happy medium, right? The yin and the yang, if you will, whatever Eastern philosophies you want to apply to that. But that concept of equaling things out, so they'll do equal amount of good shit. The Satanists are dedicated to bad shit. The Jehovah's sect is dedicated to a lot of just sadomasochism. It's real weird. And then the Christians, they don't fare well within those organizations and that little group. They get picked on a lot, but nonetheless. That's kind of the way I look at those differences. Oh,
yeah, definitely. But, I mean, going back to what I was kind of saying, too, like in kid shows, they're trying to make it so that the evil characters aren't really that bad. They kind of start off where they're the bad guy, but as the movie kind of goes on, that starts to make you like sympathize with the bad guy. So I think this is a concept that goes into exactly what you're saying, to start to do this predictive programming, kind of invert and flip the idea of what people think evil is. If you start putting that in every single kid show, that there's not this definitive good versus evil characters, it's that the bad guy isn't really that bad. It's just a matter of understanding his perspective. Isn't that exactly the concept of what we're trying to describe here with, basically this inversion and flipping to make Lucifer look like he's the good guy? Like, it's lining that up so that mentality is already in kids' heads to look for the good within the bad characters.
Sir, you're spot on. We see that with the anti-hero campaigns of our medias and fictions these days. And one of the first ones, the turning point of these in the 90s that comes to my brain hole is the film Fight Club in 1999. Mm-hmm. Got real apocalyptic with films in 99, very Processian theologies of this end of the world type apocalypse nonsense. They're an apocalypse death cult, the Process. Satanism, apocalypse, real weird group. Anyhow, Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk. He does a lot of Processian stuff. He claims to be a Discordian, which I would argue is an offshoot. It's a chaos cult offshoot of the Process, but nonetheless, he's in the Process. He's steeped in Process activities all around him, including his known knowns of declaring himself a Discordian. So my point there being is, for example, the first Discordian Bible was published in Jim Garrison's office, the district attorney in New Orleans, as he was bringing charges in the JFK situation. He was already investigating Tommy Jude Baumler, the attorney out of Guy Bannister's office. He worked with Lee Harvey Oswald when the Process came to New Orleans and America and hired Jude Baumler to incorporate their church. Then his chief suspect, the second Oswald, the founder of Discordianism, a friend of Oswald, his name's Kerry Thornley, chief suspect of Garrison's probe and grand jury, was hanging out at the Process headquarters with Processians. And again, one of those Processians printed the first Discordian Bible in Garrison's office. And they can come up with this backstory and propaganda, how Thornley created Discordianism, some bowling alley in California, and I'm not buying it. But Chuck Palahniuk, he's a major Discordian and would argue a Processian. And we see those values in his film Fight Club. The chaos factor, this underground cult network creating the chaos, and the anti-hero. We're supposed to celebrate that. Tyler Durden, the schizophrenic, maniac, psychopath, domestic terrorist. He's a celebrated hero in the story.
Dude, everybody in Gen X, man, it's still an ongoing thing, man. You see a lot of people that still kind of fall under this philosophy of Fight Club. Like, it's crazy that a lot of these films, particularly in the 90s, for whatever reason, like the philosophy behind them is stuck into things today. And for whatever reason, seems to not be able to be recreated in modern day films to have that deep of an ingrained. Like, I think it was like the grittiness that they were able to portray with it to make it just seem like it's just so like real world, because, the real world isn't just this bright, colorful, cartoony place. Like, maybe it was just, I don't know, a matter of like the time and era, but it doesn't seem like they're able to portray this philosophy the same way that they're able to do back in like the 90s / like early or late 80s, early 2000s, kind of like that era. Like, it seems like a lot of that philosophy sticks with a lot of people now, even without them realizing it. Like, there's a lot of Gen Xers, millennials that you hear regularly drop Fight Club lines as part of their regular philosophy, and it's still like ongoing to this day, dude. Like, it's weird how that stuff works. Like, a lot of this like psychological brainwashing, it doesn't work directly.
It sounds normal to me if it's consider that, right? You consider that right context.
It doesn't work directly right away. It like starts showing up later on, and it's like people definitely had their bubble for that movie, but it seems like the philosophy of that movie didn't really start like showing within people until like 20 years later, Yeah,
I saw that movie at the theater, dude. I quote that film all the time. Bob had bitch tits. You know what I mean? There's a lot of them. So I'm saying that's an initiation. If you recognize it's an initiation, it can't have power over you, I don't think, but your subconscious, that is. But if you don't recognize that, you see it manifesting in the activities of society you're talking about.
Well, I guess
the same reason why a group of 30-something women about a decade ago, I knew a number of them. I'm an old Muppet, sir. I'm retired old Muppet Master Sergeant. I mean, not Muppet. But 10 years ago when Lady Gaga was big, I knew a lot of ladies my age that were suddenly getting pink and purple hair streaks in their hair because of Lady Gaga. I'm like, this is part of the magic show. This is what they're doing. This is the mind control. What causes a grown woman, professional women, real estate agents, executives of businesses, etc., folks in the military, pilots, what women in the military, what causes them to go do that? It's got to be something that ain't a normal function of their psyche, in my opinion.
Subconscious idol worship. That's what it turned into. because a lot of these
Yeah,
people
but what
that
I'm
are the
saying
fans, they don't want to admit it, but realistically what they're doing at the end of the day is like they're idolizing and almost like worshiping these people. Like it gets weird to the point where it's like, you know, you can like music, you can do whatever, like enjoy the music you want to enjoy, but if you get to that point where you want to know what that celebrity's doing on a regular basis, you're excited to see pictures of them coming out of their house, like that's a point of obsession weirdness. Like why is it that is so normalized in society to have that much of an obsession over a person that you will never meet in your entire life? Like that is bizarre, man.
I think that's intentional, sir. The old world, you follow the stars. The new world, we got new stars. You still follow the stars. But the matters, again, there's a lot to be said about all that Hollywood nonsense. But yeah, I mean, so in the same way that folks can go to a Taylor Swift concert and leave there with no fucking memories because they just got fucking mind wiped MK Ultra style, I think folks can go to a concert and then you can implant folks with certain ideas in the same capacity. Instead of deleting them, you're inserting them through the music, through the lights, through the entire performance. All of it.
Inquiries About Reality will return after this quick commercial break. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
I mean, you're definitely seeing this even within people's lyrics. I mean, I point this out all the time, dude. People love songs. They're singing the songs all the time. They'll recite the lyrics. They'll recite the chants. But most of the time, they don't actually know the context. Like, people will like a song, love a song, know all the words to it, and you ask them what the song's about, they're like, I don't know, I just like the song. Most people are like that. They don't actually know what the song's about, but yet they're chanting the chorus regularly.
You're spot on, sir, Mr. Shayn Squatch. I do appreciate you, sir, for using your brain hole for God's intended purposes, and that is many folks use it for an oversized paperweight. But yeah, dude, that's exactly what's going on. And there's not many folks that I seriously, dude. I just fucking that's salute to you, sir. That's not many folks pick up on that. So I like to tell a story jokingly on this subject to make my point of I used to travel a lot in the Air Force, my jobs and whatnot. And then after when I first went to reserves, I ran a sales team, national sales team for a defense contractor, not like missiles and planes, war fighters, and all the shit that goes on the war fighters and shit, that's what I did. I wanted to make sure that people, that were fighting wars at least had we had shit from Vietnam, dude. I fixed a lot of programs because I went through a lot of shit, I had old shit. Like the Air Force were using Vietnam guns until I solicited Congress for $55 million and for gun stuff. And I really only needed $5 million, but this colonel convinced me to write $55 million on this paper I was writing to Congress. And then they gave me $55 million. I didn't know what to do with it. They're like, you can't send that back, dude. And I'm like, what the fuck? It's 50 more than I needed. I started making deals with all the Marines and the Army. I became a bit of a gun trafficker myself, legally speaking. This is all documented.
Legally speaking,
from Congress, I survived all investigations for these matters. I made a lot of. I liked to make trades. I did a lot of bartering. Anyhow, because here's the deal: I got money that could be used immediately for any kind of gun or scope or device. The Army was having problems too at the time, and I think these things are intentional to ruin our fucking country and our military. This was all done from the inside. It's a bit of a larger topic, but I decided to fight that head on, and I got shit canned over these matters. But nonetheless, I don't give a shit. I'm going to do the same thing if I had a chance to do it again. But when there's all these old equipment, we're fighting wars, and we have the money and resources in which to not do that, and then suddenly you get in a lot of trouble for circumventing kind of those roadblocks, which is what I did. And I circumvented the roadblocks for not just for the Air Force cops, but for everyone, including the Army and all the Air Force Special Forces. So these were the people fighting. This is 2009. Folks were fighting with Vietnam era stuff. So this is my point. And there's been a lot of these kind of factional shit that goes on even in DC, but nonetheless, you can't return money like that. So I made a lot of friends actually. So I solved a lot of problems, but there's a lot of problems internally that are created. Like, oh, it's like jamming the square block into the round hole. Like, oh, it won't fit. Well, yeah, dumb. It's the wrong shape. We get a lot of that. We get a lot of that in this country.
Ain't that the truth, man? People don't even know their head from a hole anymore, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah, but no. So it starts there, then it ends with this music situation. So I often tell a joke story where I'm traveling a lot. I go in the northern suburbs of Philadelphia. I land in Philly airport. Don't ask me which one. I was going to base New Jersey. So it was about 45 minutes north of the airport. And I'm like, it's like 9 o'clock at night. It's like a Sunday night. I flew away. I'm trying to make a meeting the next morning. Stop by the shrine of the fish goddess. Folks in ancient Babylon used to go to the shrine of the fish goddess and pay tribute. Today in modern America, we pay shrine to the fish goddess millions of folks every day at Starbucks. Look at the logo. Folks don't pay attention to the lyrics. They don't pay attention to the logos. So I go into the Shrine of the Fish Goddess and get a cup of coffee. They're closing down, getting ready to. This is fairly empty. Two girls behind the counter are singing and dancing. This is, we'll call it circa 2014 or 2015. They're singing and dancing to a song. It's very dark. And it was that song, Pumped Up Kicks.
Yep.
From Foster the People. All the little kids with the pumped up kicks, you better run faster than my bolts. And there's these two, and they're, 19, 20 somethings, dancing, singing, bopping around behind the counter, having a good time. And I said, pardon me, ma'am, do you realize the lyrics to that song? And they both looked deeply confused at me and said no. And I'm like, yeah, that's some dark shit. They're talking about kids shooting other kids at schools, and they both looked terrified. So that had not even they had not even come across that concept in their mind, despite singing and dancing to it, right? So you're making a good point, sir.
Dude, I mean, not to mention, not even just music nowadays, but even just TikToks, for example. Like, how many people are getting spatted information because they're just, I hate to say this, but there's just a lot of people that are just like brainless NPCs, and whatever information you fill into it, that is going to be exactly what they spout back out continuously, even though they don't understand what they're actually spouting back out. So you got it from the aspect of lyrics, you had it from the aspect of politics, to fun facts, to everything else now with TikTok. Everybody is just spatting information back without actually understanding any of the information that they're spatting back at anybody. And you can catch people in this, because as soon as somebody says something that you don't agree with, and you actually try to have an educated discussion with them about why you don't believe what they're saying, or why what they're saying is absolute bullshit, they have nothing to back it up, because they got all of their facts, as you could say it, off of a single video that had no reference point to where they were getting anything from, and they were just pulling everything out of their ass.
You ain't kidding, sir. You ain't kidding. We're coming into that era of a Greek apocalypse times, not a processed church apocalypse times, where they want to kill a bunch of folks, and they're very vocal about their Nazi belief systems of wiping out society, especially the middle class. They hate the middle class. Very Marxist. But I'm talking about the Greek apocalypse, as in all things are coming to be known kind of deal, right?
Ain't that the truth?
We're entering into that time frame right now, right, wrong, or indifferent. It came hard and fast at me in 2012. On December 14th, 2012, Sandy Hook. I was actually in Dallas that day, strangely enough. It's the first time I ever visited Dealey Plaza. Got a personal tour of Dealey Plaza by the security guard from the Assassination Museum that Friday afternoon. He was actually 7 years old that day in 11/22/63. He's an older man then, and working as a security guard at that museum, was dropping off a Christmas gift to his coworker who was going on holiday leave. So I was actually in Barksdale Air Force Base taking some meetings that morning. That's why I didn't want to fly to Barksdale. I flew through Dallas. I only like direct flights. Anyhow, from DC to Dallas, I wasn't taking a connector to bumfuck Louisiana, Northwest Louisiana. Done that before, played that game, did that one before. So I drove the 3.5 hours. Anyway, I get back just in time to, run into that dude on the corner in this creepy area of Dallas, and Dealey Plaza is pretty vacant at Friday, 5:00 on a December 14th. So anyway, it was a Sandy Hook that morning. I'm sitting in a room full of headquarters, Global Strike Command, the folks that do the nukes for the Air Force, the MPs there, watching the entire Sandy Hook thing pop off, and they were all playing Pumped Up Kicks in their brain hole, sir. And there wasn't a single person that had a single thought other than, like, does this look fun? And this is a team of expert, best of the best first responders the Air Force has within that command, right? No one was like, hey, man, this situation looks weird. I was a teenage SWAT team leader. I was immediately tuned to this. None of this is right. And I started I'm pointing this stuff out in a room of people I thought would agree with me. They all look at me like, hey, I felt like I was back at that Pentagon water cooler a few years prior telling folks that Islamic terror was fucking made by our government, and 9/11 was an inside job, not the least of which a deep occult ritual. So I was kind of repeating things. Anyway, it was a weird day because by the time I got there, I remember my friend walking me out to the parking lot there. I was coming from in DC. I was meeting down there. And anyway, my friend down there walking me to the parking lot. I was like, hey, man, why are you asking questions about that school shipment? Because it looks fucking weird, dude. All of the first responders were already there when the cameras were on. All the roads are blocked. There's no ambulances, yada, yada, yada. I would go further into those matters. And I'm from Fairfield County, Connecticut, sir, born in Danbury. That Mormon church I spoke of, I would learn my Mormon ward would be at Sandy Hook back in 1980 when I was born. And the Mormons did one of these numbers to me, sprinkled some water on me there after birth in Sandy Hook school. So these matters of this high weirdness of this world and what I would describe as perhaps some sort of quantum entanglement factors that we don't quite understand, that caused me to go real deep into those matters. But nonetheless, weird day for me. And if you think about it in the sense of this Greek apocalypse idea and that whole Mayan calendar nonsense, that was a propaganda scare tactic campaign in large part. But if you think about it in the sense that they were tracking some larger sense of when the universe is going to come to a knowing, which is what the Greek were talking about when they said the apocalypse. You could put them in the same framework as that Mayan 2012 sense. That I got apocalyptic real hard, dude, on December 14th, 2012.
And dude, going into all this stuff with Alex Jones, with him getting sued and possibly losing InfoWars over talking about Sandy Hook and all that type of stuff, man, yeah. I'm fully convinced that, I mean, as much as Alex Jones, don't get me wrong, is definitely entertaining to listen to, I definitely think that he's a cog in the system, and that whole thing was just intended to solidify the fact that, quote, this really happened, because now Alex Jones is getting sued for it. You know, the conspiracy guy's getting sued for it because he was talking out about it. It's making an example, so to speak, out of somebody who's already was intended to make an example out of anyways. But you know, if you create a false story and then you create a false court case that goes along with it, you know, for the average person, they're like, oh yeah, yep, any conspiracy I had in my mind, it's out of my head now. But the rest of us are sitting over here like, yeah, that still looks real fucking weird, man.
you, sir, are spot on. I'll give you a couple footnotes in which to emphasize your points. The attorney for the Sandy Hook families was Dick Blumenthal's son. Dick Blumenthal, U.S. Senator from Connecticut, who got so confused that he thought he fought in the Vietnam War, but turns out he got confused. He was just watching it. When he got called out for lying about all that, he just said, oh shit, I was on my couch watching it from home. I just thought I was at the war. Go fuck yourself, Dick.
It was the 60s. I was on LSD.
Yeah, it was real wild. Yeah, real wild. Giraffe Dodger sits on his couch and claims we fought in war. I fought in, I've done a number. I've lost a number. Sadly, and again, I'm anti-war, and I always have been, because I've been a defensive fighting unit with the military police. The berets we wore, the patch said Defensor Fortis, defending the force. But and I mean, despite the fact that I'm a teenage SWAT team leader and graduate of numerous sniper schools, not the least of which the Army Sniper and SWAT school, despite only being in the Air Force, they thought highly enough of me to send me to a lot of different schools. And you were mentioned earlier too about folks who comedians like Segura and killers. I have a theory, sir. If you know how to make someone laugh, you know how to make someone kill. I'm just saying that I was a trained killer first before I started making people laugh. So I'm just saying the traits they're similar in nature.
It's psychology and reading the room.
Similar groundwork.
Yeah, it's psychology and reading the room and knowing how to manipulate people. Because at the end of the day, comedian, technically, in the most literal sense, is manipulating somebody because they inch you along, they steer you in these different directions. You're sitting entranced by what they're saying. And when they finally hit that punchline, like, you're fully in their lap. Like, it's psychology. Like, you are following their psychology, and they are manipulating your thoughts, your mind, the way you think. They're pushing you down different angles. Like, it's a weird thing to think about. But just to be able to stand in front of a room and control a crowd like that is a mass understanding of psychology.
You're spot on there, Shayn Squatch. I like your style, sir. It's again, that's an excellent analysis. I can't dispute any of that. Spot on. If we're gonna be bringing this thing in for closer, I would like to touch on those cryptids in the mounds again, though. Before we.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought us back around to it. So.
I wasn't gonna let it go anywhere. I put a pen in it, sir.
I was gonna say I made sure that I wrote it down on my piece of paper here to make sure we got back to it too. So.
So we got St. Coletta Dogman first sighting. We got Mothman of Point Pleasant. His first sighting was at the TNT factory, which was built on a mound site. Second sighting on a golf course in Mason County there, just outside of Point Pleasant. And one thing that's commonly not known, perhaps, by many folks is all these golf courses were built on mound sites because they're like, hey, they'll go nice in our golf course. For example, Donald Trump recently sold his stake in the country club a couple years ago, I think during his first administration, but he was part owner, 40% owner in the Mound Builders Country Club in Newark, Ohio. Now, that's a very interesting site for mounds because they have perfect geometric shapes of lines and stuff that go 40 and 50 acres. In our modern day surveyor equipment, and when I speak to modern day surveyors and say, hey, what's the limitations of your business there, bud? They're like, yeah, we can shoot an azimuth about 40 yards straight, but we can't build it. So on top of just they're doing it 50 yards thousands of years ago there at the Newark site where Donald Trump owned some mounds. Donald Trump's the largest private mound owner in the world, by the way, by virtue of his golf courses. But the second mound sighting there was Mothman and Point Pleasant, just outside of Mason County. We got Badger Man at a park, Alms Park in Cincinnati. Remember, I said Cincinnati was the new Rome, so it's the city of 7 hills, and George Washington surveyed a lot of that business and himself, and one of which was Alms Park, which is home to mounds and its own cryptid. I disregard Alt Park. The Alt Park beaver. And then there's the giant beaver. And then we got the giant octopus man just about 10 miles downstream in Richmond, Ohio, Claremont County. And then that sighting occurred throughout the Ohio River Valley in the 1950s in numerous instances. Lots of sightings, radio reports, police officers, lots of emergency calls, and so on and so forth. That incident as well. Then we got the 1950s Loveland Frog sighting, which is about 10 miles inland on the Little Miami River from that location. So a high volume of locations within like a 10-mile radius of cryptids and mound sightings in Cincinnati.
And bizarre cryptids, not just like standard cryptids. You got like Mothman,
not your
Badger Man, Frogman, like these
Frogman,
animals
dude.
mixed with humanoids, which is like you only see these one-time sightings in like these specific spots. Well, Frogman was like I think 2 or 3 times technically, but just really, really bizarre that you don't see these animal mixed cryptids like all over the place. Like I don't know if it's from Ohio, but I remember hearing about this like Catman. Like I'm almost curious if that one was from Ohio too now.
Well, you let me know the sites there. I'll find you the mound because and it's Linda Godfrey, the dog man whisperer there that got me down this road because she mapped out all the dog man sightings, Wisconsin dog man sightings, and she determined that it was all mound sites.
I mean, no different from Michigan.
That's fascinating.
We got the Michigan dog man too, and it's all along the Manistee, and the Manistee is full of mounds too. So there's just another connection. And weirdly enough, just to throw this in, other side of Lake Michigan, that's where all the Beast of Bray Road stuff was happening. So
yes, sir.
Just want to point that one out, but and
a lot of mounds there too.
I mean, probably going all the way down and around because I mean, there's dogman sightings that literally go all the way from like Bray Road all the way up and over to the Manistee. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's all honestly dealing with the same group or the same tribe, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, there's mounds from Bray Road all the way up to Jefferson County there where the St. Coletta's was or is the first dogman sighting.
Yeah, see? And it goes all the way up to almost the tip of Michigan with the Manistee. And actually, it goes over to the other side of Michigan, too, because there's mounds all over Michigan. And there's dogman sightings up in northern Michigan over to the east side. And over on the east side, I know that there's mounds, and there's a lot more like violent dogman encounters over in that area.
Weird shit happens in and around mounds, sir.
Yep, that's all I can say, man. Don't tear these things apart. You never know what you might find.
You really don't. You really don't. Well, Shayn Squatch, I appreciate the invite, sir. It's an awesome conversation. I definitely look forward to a future conversation and you joining me on my Friday show for a roundtable discussion on more of these topics.
Absolutely, man. And we'll definitely have to do a round 2 in general, diving into all the weird stuff you talk about. We still, at some point, man, we have to get into some of the vampire stuff that we were kind of mentioning a little bit earlier. Maybe we can leave that as a good pin for a segue into a part 2 we can do at some point here soon.
Let me give you this one here. We'll drop it here then. Mounds, vampires, Hollywood, right? We've talked all these things, right?
Seems like they all go together.
Colts. Yeah, let me coalesce all these things into one subject matter. So Wesley Snipes used all of his Blade money. He produced the Blade films with his production company, Amon-Ra Film Productions. He had an Amon-Ra security company, which was a contingent of that in that corporation. That company purchased land across from this area in Georgia, known as the town of Tama-Re. Dwight York, he's a kid diddler, sex trafficker, sitting inside a former Supermax prison today for next few hundred years. He also invented hip hop. All hip hop artists attribute and pay homage to him. And the band Outkast was a member of his cult down in Georgia, the New Wabian Nation. That was the capital of Tama-Re. Wesley Snipes was also one of the quote-unquote New Wabian millionaires. In the 2004 Grammy performance by Outkast, the one they had to apologize for doing the Indian alien stuff with Scientologist Jack Black giving him an introduction L. Ron Hubbard style to the performance. Yeah, that was New Wabian Nation, Ancient Alien Cargo Cult stuff. All these Ancient Alien Cargo Cults do stick together. They fundamentally have a lot of agreements on that. But this one in particular, Dwight York, the guy who invented hip-hop, he decided that he was going to build an ancient Egyptian city, pyramid, sphinx, and everything. They had a nightclub in one of the unlicensed nightclub in one of the pyramids. That became an issue later, but fancy. On mounds in Georgia, claiming that they were the descendants of the mound builders and they were part alien and some other nonsense. Wesley Snipes financed this. His security company owned the adjacent property because that was their staging area and training facility for the actual city. So that was like their police force, owned by Snipes, confirmed by their PR guys, funded by his Blade film franchise money that he made. Dwight York went to prison for sex trafficking in 2004. They did not go after Wesley for the sex trafficking. They did go after Wesley for the Al Capone prosecution, the tax evasion. Because part of their movement is sovereign citizen, but it was the same takedown. So we're sold these propaganda in America that he just didn't want to pay taxes. No, he was financing a kidnapping operation on a mound site with an ancient Egyptian theme constructed by the guy who invented hip hop, who gave Jay-Z his first music video at the New Waban Nation former headquarters in Brooklyn, New York, which still exists today.
There you go, bring it all around full circle, man. What not a better way to wrap up the show? Hold on tight, guys. This is our last break, so stay tuned. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in. Well, man, I guess with that, man. I
promised folks a barn burner, sir, and I want to leave this one with a barn burner.
Well, perfect, man. And to leave it on another note, man, I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there was any words of wisdom that you might want to bestow on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
Tough question, sir. Well, the only wisdom I guess I could offer, if you've ever asked, have you paid your dues, tell that person the check's in the mail.
At least get them off your back for the time being.
So, yes, sir, the check's in the mail.
Well, man, if anybody wanted to come and check out your podcast, possibly get in contact with you for any reason whatsoever, man, where can they find all of your work across the internet, and where can they find you at, man?
Operation GCD, YouTube, Twixters, Instagrams, Rumbles. I'm live on there on those platforms Sundays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, which you'll be joining me soon here in the future there for one of them Fridays discussions, sir.
Yes, sir, I will. Hopefully. And I will make sure I include all those links down in the show description, man. And I really appreciate you making the time to come on today. And I'm really looking forward to what we're going to end up diving into next time, man.
No. I appreciate the time, sir. Appreciate the invite. I'll make sure I'll get Heidi on that Friday's discussion for our roundtable too. She would love to join in this conversation.
Well, perfect, man. I haven't actually gotten to talk to her on a show since she came on to my show, so it'll be nice to catch up with her too in the process, man. Two birds, one stone.
Oh yes, sir. No, Heidi's great. We share a lot of research back and forth. I think she's awesome just as a person, and not the least of which she's my cousin. So I got to at least say that. Right? I don't have to though, because my cousin, the actual vice president, not a fan. So don't vote for me in 2028.
If anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook are the ones I'm the most active on. Or you can also get a hold of me through the submission forum, which is available up at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is by calling or texting the Bizarre Reality Media hotline. That number is 313-364-1551, and you guys can call or text that 24/7. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. I'm Dr. D's taking a watercraft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormal